Hey, good morning, everybody. It's John and Heather, Heather and John. I don't know how you want to say that. I think it's always polite to say the other person's name first and then your name, right? I
I
think that's
think
kind of
so.
what.
I think it's proper grammar too. So
Yeah, Heather and John. Hi, good morning, everybody. Let me start over again. So, this is the beauty. We get to do whatever we want. So, we're going to start over. Good morning, everybody. It's Heather and John coming at you with the Yes Show. Say Yes Show. Heather, I actually missed not being here on Monday.
well,
I
I
figured.
missed you on Monday too. It was, but 20 minutes goes by fast when you're telling stories and when you have audio issues. So those two things combined together. So I plugged in this
So
way.
far, so
Hopefully,
yeah,
yes,
yeah. So far,
exactly.
so good. We are cruising. For those, I know somebody's watching right now. So if you are listening or watching, just give us a thumbs up in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know that you're here. One of the things I know I get excited about is when people join us, they comment. But if you are joining us, also let us know where you're joining from. So we've had
Hmm.
Singapore, we've had Texas, we've had a variety of different people join in and jump in on these calls. So it's been pretty amazing to kind of see the reach of where this is going. So we're talking about yes, and I know I've heard your stories, and I love how passionate about yes. Thank you, Felicia. Thanks. She said she missed me. I love
No.
that. Thank you for that. Going into saying yes, Heather, one of the things I know you're incredibly passionate about is travel and going out and seeing the world. So you say yes to a lot of that, but there are challenges that come with it. So I'd love for you to just kind of share some of those challenges with the audience. Even though you say yes, it may not always be perfect, but there are things that show up for you. So what's showing up for you as you say yes, as you get ready to
Yeah,
pack?
on Monday when you weren't here, I was sharing some of my travel stories that I've been on and how saying yes to a magazine that I saw, a National Geographic magazine. I saw a tiger's nest on the front cover, and then one of the trips that I went on a few years back, that was going to Tiger's Nest, and I didn't even know it was a real place. So that was like phenomenal to see your childhood dream. It's almost like it was like going to Disneyland for me, honestly,
Mm.
because and in fact, actually better than Disneyland because I went to Disney. Here's a side story. I went to Disney as an adult. I never went as a kid.
Mm.
And I remember Sunday nights by the TV, Mutual of Omaha, watching the Animal Kingdom, then watching the Disney show. I know now everyone can check out what my age is or have no clue what we're talking about. Doesn't matter. It's okay. And I remember that Disney castle and just seeing it and be like, I want to go there one day. And when I got to Disney as an adult, and my sister and my niece and nephew were coming a day after, so I went
Mm.
like all by myself to Disney on the first day, and I was so straw like draw like I don't know, I was beside myself. The castle, maybe I'm like hurting this for somebody else, but the castle isn't real. It's literally like a walkthrough. It's like this wide, and I was like, where's my castle? This is so depressing, because in my mind it was like this huge like Casa Loma,
Mm.
like big castle sort of thing. So anyways, I digress, but our childhood brain has activated lots of things in us: curiosity, a sense of play, a sense of adventure. And when we can tap into those things as adults, it is it is unbelievable what can get out of our way, how we can get out of our own way. So I
Mm.
do these travel trips. Most of the time when I go on these trips, they're in remote places that even if I wanted to connect, it's not even possible. And that's by design. And I'll tell you, if you have not taken a vacation from your phone ever, that I highly, highly recommend it. I've tried to do it like just up in my cottage and put it away for 5 hours. It doesn't work. That doesn't work. You have to actually just like be in a place that you have to be disconnected, because when you get disconnected from your technology, you get reconnected with your brain, with your heart, and your body,
Mm.
and those three things can drive you to that next decision. So I didn't answer your question, John,
No,
but
you
I
didn't.
I went into a whole nother story because you wanted to hear about my packing right now. I'm of course packing for Morocco. I'm attempting, I'll say attempting, to do carry on only because of the mayhem in the airports and everything. And it's not an easy task to do 2 weeks in, like, really hot weather and really cold weather, and pack for everything that you might need, because there's always this belief that you'll need something else. And you know what? Sometimes you just got to do without, and I just don't want to be cold. That's really it. I just don't want to be cold. So I've said yes to going to Morocco. I've said yes to climbing a mountain that is pretty high, and I'm quite nervous, John, because I had COVID a few weeks ago, so my lung capacity doesn't feel like it can handle altitude. My knee is still, it's now at about 75%, but that's not 100, so that's kind of concerning. And let's face it, I'm 50, so
What does that got to do with anything? Come on,
well,
for real.
you're right. You're right. That's a limiting belief that
It's a
just popped
mindset,
up.
right?
But
Yeah.
it's there. It's there for me, and only because I'm scared. Any other time, I'm like, yes, I'm 50. Yes, and I celebrate it. But I'm a
Let's
little
do this.
scared about what my body is going to have to do for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, it's interesting because you touched on a few things. And I just want to say good morning, Claudio. Thank you for jumping in. Felicia, again. It's difficult to disconnect from technology because we have to do it so much to catch up all day. And sorry, let's just spend a second on tech because I think this is important. Saying yes to tech. I love tech, right? Like I am, I worked in the technology industry for over 25 years. I started when I was really, really, really young. And I work out with my phone. I live with my phone. I do everything is here, like this beautiful piece of equipment. And I don't think people realize this is a camera studio. This is everything you need, right? Like this is why I love it. But you're right, disconnecting from it is just as important. You got to make sure you do that every once in a while because it enables you to reconnect with people as well. So that is it. But from, you touched on this belief of age, right? Like, and the reason I jumped in there when you said, I'm 50, I'm like, no, the one thing I've seen this year and the one thing that's really been showing up for me, and we saw it even last week with Pat, people that are well into their 60s and 70s, 80s, this year I competed in I competed in a few triathlons, and one of the top 10 finishers in the triathlon was over 80 years old.
Wow.
Like the overall top 10, this individual, this man was 80 years old. I'm like, oh my gosh, so what is age, right? Like, how are we defining ourselves and what models? And I think we even touched on this a few weeks ago. What models of aging do we have for ourselves? And this is the one thing I think you got to be really careful of. When I looked, unfortunately, I don't have my parents with me anymore. At 73 and 63, they're no longer here. And I'm like, well, I was like, oh, this isn't looking good for me. It's a mindset, right? Like I can do a lot of things for myself to put myself into a state of better health, right? And the question is, what are you doing for yourself from a health perspective? They talk about biohacking. That's like the new buzzword that's out there in terms of nutrition, in terms of just bringing ourselves and calming our minds, because a lot of it is just happening up here more than anywhere else, right? So what do you do for that? So what I'd love to hear from you, Heather, is what are you doing? I guess maybe biohacking, whether it's meditation or whatever. What are you doing to put yourself into that good state, that positive state that's going to get you to that finish line, to the top of the mountain?
Yeah, you know what? I watched a TED video yesterday, and I posted it actually on my LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to see it, and it's the technique of visualization, and it's this mountain climber that did a solo free climb on, I forget, the El Capo, which is a crazy face
Yes.
of a mountain, and he shared how he visualized multiple times over and over again, not failing, but achieving, getting to that top. So he knew every step of the way and everything that he was going to think and feel and do through that climb. And I just thought that was a great example. It's an extreme example, but it's an example of, when we visualize, how often do we visualize what's going to go wrong? And you just heard it out of my voice 5 seconds ago. Here's all the things that I'm afraid of. But at the same time as those fears are coming up, I'm also having the conversation in my brain and in my head and in my heart, I'm going to get to that top of the mountain. I'm going to be, I can't wait to see a new world from the top of that mountain. And because when you get to the top of one mountain, you can then see the next peak and the next peak. And, that will be a real thing for me in 2 weeks. But it's a metaphor for our life, right? Just as we get to one mountain, there's another mountain to climb. So visualization of like, I can do this, I will do this, I will be there. I mean, as silly as it is, I got business class seats. It was only an extra $500, and I was like, that's the best business seat class ever, so I am buying that. And I've never sat in business class for
Wow.
an 8-hour flight, so I visualized sitting in business class and having a good old time too. So like, you can visualize all kinds of parts of your life, the ones that you want to enjoy and the ones that you want to work through, and definitely that. Now meditation, of course, I've got lists all over the place to make sure that I'm, not worried about what I'm going to forget, and then of course letting go to technology. So those are all the things that keep me going, and everyday movement. Every single day movement. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. And no, the reason I'm smiling, Michael just jumped in and said, I sort of agree. Hey, that's cool, Michael. I love that. My mindset is in my 30s. However, my body often reminds me it's almost 50. Hey, I'm with you. Saying yes to learning the water ski at my age is fun, but recovery time is fun.
Yes, it is. Or you can stretch some more, Michael. Me and you, we can do that.
Yoga. Ooh. But it's funny you talked about visualization. And actually, that's something I actually used this year when I did my first triathlon, right? Like, one of the things as I was doing my training at the end of, my swims, the end of my bikes and runs, I would visualize myself crossing that finish line, right? Because a lot of times, years ago, actually, Michael, it's funny you say that, because I actually ran my first marathon at the age of 28, right? So it wasn't until much later in life I actually started doing the sports stuff, because it wasn't, I was always kind of active. I played hockey until I was 18, but then there was I guess this is kind of common for me. There was a 10-year break, and I did nothing for 10 years. And then I'm like, one day, while I was at the time, I was still a smoker. I'm like, you know what? Let's go run this marathon. Like, how difficult can this thing be, right? I'm like, 42.2 kilometers is, it's 42 kilometers, 26.2 miles, whatever. It's a long way to go. And if you've never run a marathon, try walking. It's like walking across from Etobicoke all the way to the other side of Scarborough, right? Like, when you think about that kind of distance, how far you're walking. And it's funny you talk about Disney, because I did a marathon in Disney. So I didn't even get to see the castle. I ran by the castle. I didn't really get to see the castle because I ran through all 5 parks. So it was like really quick, right? I was like, oh man, I should have stayed an extra day and kind of enjoyed that. But the visualization, it's the one thing that helped me get through to the end of my event this year. And I know I shared this with you, but one of the things I got stuck on, 50 meters into the water, I was hit with a panic attack. I was hit with anxiety. I'm like, what am I doing? Michael, like, am I crazy here? Like, what, like, I'm almost 50 and I'm like jumping into triathlons at this point in my life. Like, who am I? And I've done nothing for the last 3.5 years because I sat around eating lots of potato chips and drinking wine and, having Crown and Coke, right? It wasn't a good sign. I know I'm sharing a lot of stuff here right now, but I'm in the water, I'm 50 meters in. I'm like, I still got another 200 to go. And I'm struck with a panic attack, right? Like, I'm taking on water, I'm drinking water. I'm like, my arms are flailing. And the one thing they tell you is when you are feeling like you're in danger, you need help, take off your cap and somebody will come and save you. And what was funny, going back to age, at the start, when I was putting my bike on the rack, I met this gentleman, also by the name of John, ironically, who was 60, still doing triathlons. So I looked at John and I said, hey, John, what's that one thing that has kept you going all these years? Because he's been doing these things since 89. He goes, well, it's my race. I'm not racing against anybody else. It's my race. And my goal is I can go as fast, as slow as I want. And that's what I remember as I go through these things. And I said, oh, that's great advice. So as I'm like in this, like ready to like quit and jump out of the water, I visualized myself getting to the finish line. I'm like, okay, how am I going to do that right now when I want to quit? And that's where I was at. And then
Wow.
as I'm doing all of this, John is like doing the breaststroke, right? Just like, and he's like swimming by me. I'm like, and I look at him. I'm like, just take a second, right? Like, let's breathe. I got a wetsuit on. Like it was the first time in a wetsuit in open water. I'm like, so you feel the pressure of the wetsuit. You've worn a wetsuit. You know what it's like. The pressure of the wetsuit is on you. It's like, oh my gosh. And I looked at John. I'm like, let's just take a second here. And I didn't. As he's swimming by, it's my race, right? I'm not racing against anybody else.
I love that. The symbolism of that is fantastic, John. It's as if your future self swam right by you and said, come join me in the future. Like it wasn't by accident that his name was John. The universe gives us messages exactly when we need them. And if we can hear them, if we're open enough to hear them, they're super loud. So that's the other invitation that I have for everyone is, what message have you gotten lately from the universe, from your environment, from the people around you that you've been a little hard-headed to not hear? Or, you know what, you just didn't think it was possible. If you wouldn't have run into John that day, you might have taken your cap off. You probably would have, I think. It sounds like it. Wow.
No, but it what it ended up doing is anchoring in the visualization I did throughout my training.
Yeah.
My goal was to get to the finish, right? My goal was not to get there in a certain time. My goal was just to get to the finish. And I knew I just had to go. I just, so I found a model of somebody that I could, kind of chase after, follow. And I just followed him throughout the water. I lost him on the bike. The guy was like, he flew by me, but, age to me, now that I see all of that, I'm like, we can redefine what that starts to look like. And Michael, I love the fact that you started picking up water skiing, right? Like that's amazing. Yes, the recovery takes a little bit longer, but there's things that we can take to help us with those things too, right? Like just from a recovery perspective, Advil's your friend. Just be careful; it's not too good for your stomach. Don't take too much of it. But it's amazing that growth still exists for you. Jumping into the water, hopping on water skiing is not an easy thing. I don't know if you've ever tried that, Heather.
I actually can water ski. I'm a really good water skier.
Awesome. Yep. That's amazing. I tried it.
I haven't done it for many years and my knee would say otherwise, but I can water ski. And it is not easy. It is not easy.
It's not, even just to get up on the skis, on the water, never mind like doing the twists and turns and all that other stuff. But, kudos to you, Michael, for getting up there and doing it regardless of what's going to happen in front of you. And I think those are the things that keep us young. When you say yes to those things where you're really going to challenge yourself, even though, it might hurt for a day or two, but that pain will go away. But that feeling, that sensation, that excitement that you have for those, whatever, couple of minutes or however long you're on those skis, man, that you can't replace, man. That will, for 2 days, who cares? Like, trust me, at the end of my triathlons, I'm with you, Michael. Recovery took like 3-4 days, sometimes a full week. And I'm like, what am I thinking, right? And I'm like, okay, let's go sign up for another one. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh my God, I love that. Right? I always say, body pain is temporary. Disappointment pain goes into your whole system, and you don't want to carry that around with you. So feel the short-term pain so that you can have the long-term gain. And yes, pain medication is your friend if it has to be, right? So, John, there's so much out of today, when I think about what the call to action is for everyone, what I'm taking away from this is it's my race. And that's for, that mountain that I'm going to climb in 2 weeks. It's for the goals of, that I'm working on in my business, for my personal goals, but it's also for my whole life. It's my race. And I get to choose which model I believe is the right model for me. And no longer is it that model of, well, I'm 50, so I can't do these things, or I'm 60 and I can't do these things. And I got to go find some more models because some of that's still ingrained in there. So I got to let that go. But it's my race. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that, because years ago, and just to kind of get to the end of this, my financial advisor kind of did this chart, right? It goes, when you get to 50s, you start to wind down your career. I'm like, what? What do you mean wind down my career? Like now that I'm here, I'm at this point. When I did that with him, I was 20 something at the time. And now that I'm here, I'm like, I'm not winding down, I'm winding up. Like, where are you going? Like, Colonel Sanders in his 60s or 70s went out and he pitched his recipe to these restaurants, right? So, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those models that have done what everybody else says can't be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you pointed that out. And maybe that's call to action, right? Like, it's your own race, and find somebody that you can model that can help you get yourself to where you want to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just go there, because you can do it. And whether it's water skiing, whether it's the technology, whatever it is, find that model. And, the one thing I learned, I think both of us have learned, the models are, it shortens the amount of time that it takes for us to learn something and to really understand it. And that's why
borrow their system.
Yeah,
ask them what their success pattern is, right?
Yeah, 100%. So I can't believe that's 20 minutes. That's quick.
So quick.
Okay. So we will be back, everybody, on Friday morning at 8:40, and we are going to have a special guest with us. I'm very excited about that. Are we going to drop it? Maybe
it's
we'll
Ryan.
drop.
Yeah, Ryan DaCosta, and he's got great energy. Anyways, I can't wait to see where this goes. He's had an amazing transformation of his body and his mind and his soul, and I'm sure we'll get into that conversation with him. So, yeah.
No, it's going to be amazing. All right, so everybody, thank you, Michael, Felicia, Claudio, for joining in, and for those that haven't commented but you're listening in, just big thank you for joining us this morning. It's Wednesday, October 26th. Kind of crazy to think that we are almost at the end of the month of October, but I just wanted to say thank you. And I know spending time with us, time is the new commodity, and I'm glad that you spent that with us. So wishing you all an amazing day, and we'll see you on Friday. All right, Heather. Ciao.
Bye, John.